Hey, what's up, YouTube family? Good afternoon. It's your favorite black gentleman or your melanated gentleman from Nebraska. And you already know what comes after that. I want to thank God for another day. I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for another day, for waking me up this morning and giving me the opportunity, another chance to get it right. So today we're going to go back to a book that I was teaching out of, or I was reading, called Jews and Blacks in the Early Modern World. This book has a lot of jewels in it. As you read through this book, it's not an easy read. It's somewhat of a hard read. You really got to kind of go over things 2 or 3 times to really understand the context sometimes. But there's key words in here, key phrases in here that you'll be able to pick up and understand, and put 2 and 2 together and get 4. So so we're back in here. My last page I was on was 181 in my previous content in this book, and we're going to start on page 182. So I'm going to start on a page where it might not make sense in the beginning or at first. If you go back and read the other content, or if you go back and listen to my other content out of this book, it'll make sense when I first start reading. But if you don't, then you'll kind of be a little lost. Probably not for that long, but still it'll come together. But if you're looking at this content for the first time, then you can still get an understanding of where I'm going by just starting with this. But I encourage you to go back and watch the first piece of content out of this book. So we're going to go ahead and continue. We're going to go to page 182. All right, people, let's go ahead and get started. Jews and blackness or blacks became linked in Iberian discourse for their supposedly heritable and indelible characteristics. Padre Mastre Gaspar des Rios, designed by the Portuguese Inquisition in the 1640s to engage the accused Judaizer, I pronounced that horribly, but Judaizer, Isaac de Castro in theological debate and convinced him to renounce Judaism, got nowhere with the youth, as was true of all the others appointed for the same end. With frustration, the priest concluded, citing Jeremiah 13:23, that it seemed to him that it is impossible for the Jews to repent of their errors, as it is possible for the black to change his skin or the leopard to change his spots, and thus be judged by the youth. Abstinent and pertinacious. At times, these metaphysical linkages could be explicitly genetic. In The Merchant of Venice, first printed in 1600, Shakespeare had Shylock swear to Tubal and to Chus, his countrymen, that he would rather have Antonio's flesh than 20 times the value of the son that he did owe him. Chus, that is Cush, that is Cush, the progenitor of black Africans, here became a countryman of the Jew in primitive vengefulness and spite. And some parenthetical remarks in the prologue to the English translation of Geographical History of Africos of Leo Africanus, John Pori wrote about the fountains of the Nile. Some say that they are the people called Kafri or Kafats, being as black as pitch, and of a mighty stature, and some think descended of the Jews. But now they are idolaters and most deadly enemies to the Christians, for they make continual assaults upon the obeisants, despoiling them both of life and goods. But all the daytime they lie lurking in mountains, woods, and deep valleys. This confused report of the interreligious wars and power struggles of Ethiopia presented an ambiguous image of the Jew. The black Kafris descended from the Jews. What? The black Kafris descended from the Jews, who were themselves black. Or else the Kafris descent into idolatry and bestial living entailed as well their turning black, either reading highly plausible. But the current outer hatred of these formerly Jewish blacks for Christianity in civilized society reflected in this view only a logical development of the new repressed inner hatred Jews bore towards Christendom. The male Jew's ancestral and spiritual allegiance was usually painted in dark and threatening tones, as in Ludovico Astrio's comedy Nigromante, I think that's what that says, The Necromancer, first presented in 1529 in Ferrara. The title character is a conniving fraud, jack of all unrespectable trades. His servant, Nabio, describes him to the audience as follows. Like gypsies, we go from place to place, and wherever he passes, he leaves his imprint like a snail, or for a more fitting comparison, like fire or lightning. And in each place, in order to disguise himself, he changes his name and says he's from another country. First version of the play, his dress in his country. Now he calls himself Peter, now John. Now he pretends to come from Greece, now from Egypt, now from some other country, Africa. In reality, he's a Jew, and he was among those who were expelled from Castile. It would be a long story if I were to tell you how many men he has cheated and robbed, how many poor homes he has broken up, how many he has tainted with adultery by pretending that he would make barren wives pregnant, or by pretending to remove suspicion and discord that arise between husbands and wives. That Aristide presented the play in Ferrara, where a large community of ex-conversos resided, can be no coincidence. His harping on the Jews' dissembling of national origins also reflected common conceptions, as did his choice of countries under Ottoman or Islamic rule, allying the Jew with the enemy of Christendom. Indeed, the Jew could seem either European or non-European at will, and his swarthiness played no small role in this, perhaps leading Aristide to change the more specific Egypt of the play's first version to the more generic Africa of the final draft. While such views may be passed of a mere descriptive statements about the darkness of the Sephardic Jews, they soon connected intimately with perspective notions based on the significance of the physiological or racial characteristics. Thus, in a 1750 petition from Kingston, Jamaica, Christians objecting to a recent attempt by a Jewish landowner to vote presented the following argument. Though a mulatto of the fourth descent may vote at elections, yet the Jews, many of whom are mulattoes of that decree, are, by our wise legislator, absolutely excluded from that privilege. Who else was frowned upon to vote? It sounds like, because I remember at one point in time, it were frowned upon for black people to vote. So there's a correlation there. It being expressly enacted that they, the said mulattoes, shall enjoy all the privileges and immunities of His Majesty's white subjects of this land, provided that they are brought up in the Christian religion. Wow. It being also unlawful to employ any Jew in any of the offices of record, they being put in that regard on the foot of mulattoes and Negroes by an act of governor, council, and assembly of the island. Note the lack of stability in the Jewish color, and the overlap of cultural and physiological otherness. Many of the Jews were mulattoes of the fourth degree, that is, very light-skinned blacks. Hold on, let's read that again. Many of the Jews were mulattoes of the fourth degree, that is, very light-skinned blacks, and hence should have been permitted to vote. But Jews were not Christians, unlike mulattoes. The religious exclusion of Jews put them on the level of mulattoes and blacks. Jews both were and were not blacks, were and were not whites. These various views of Jews branded them, in Dr. Roediger's terminology, as not yet white. Not yet white. Wow. The Jewish gaze outward ramifies significantly on internal perceptions as well. The effort to clarify the blackness of Jews, helped shape some seminal moments in the development of Jewish autoethnography. Medieval Jewish responses to observed differences in skin color took an apologetic tone. As seen from these sources, linking inner purity, beauty, and goodness with outer darkness, loneliness, and oppression. Judah Rosenthal cited a medieval manuscript of polemics advising Jews accused of being uglier than Christians to retort that before our temple was destroyed, we were more attractive. On the basis of Isaiah 52:14-15, medieval Jewish exegetes agreed with their Christian and Muslim contemporaries or compatriots that Jews were darker than their neighbors. What? Arguing that this difference resulted from the melancholia of the Jews. Many Jewish writers concerned with the lost 10 tribes use color as one indicator in their panoply of measures of the identity, authenticity, and status of exotic Jews. The Italian rabbi Obadiah di Bertinio wrote that he himself says 2 Jews from Ethiopia who've been bought as slaves by Jews in Cairo and redeemed. They were a little black, only not so black as the Cushites. Describing in a letter of 1488 the land of Aden, Obadiah said that its inhabitants are somewhat black. It is unclear if this included the Jews residing there or not. A mid-16th century letter of R. Yisrael of Jerusalem to R. Avertham of Perugia, Italy, similarly described a prisoner ransomed by the Alexandrian Jewish community, who related signs and wonders regarding the kingdom of the Jewish tribes. This prisoner may very well have been David ha-Rabinia, the so-called Messianic pretender. At first, the prisoner was said to be almost like a Cushite, yet it is very unclear from that text just who was a Cushite and who was not. The prisoner was described as the Cushite, yet the not quite Cushite prisoner seems to have been the Cushite with whom some well-to-do Ethiopian Jews left on their mission. While the efforts to fix the status of these various exotic Jews and Jewish communities come across as relatively neutral ethnographic observations, others possessed more ethnocentric overtones. Harold Brockman cited the fascinating and revealing emendations made to the color scheme of Noah's 3 sons that appeared in the first printed editions of the early medieval text. Shem, originally black and pleasing, in earlier manuscripts was Europeanized, becoming white and pleasing. Let's read that again. Shem, originally black and pleasing, in earlier manuscripts was Europeanized, becoming white and pleasing. Ham's description, black as a crow, was evidently deemed too ambiguous and was charged to black and ugly. Japhet, whose whiteness originally signified a lack, now had his whiteness transformed to correspond with the new ideals of European beauty. That's a bomb drop right there, guys. That is a bomb drop. He became entirely white and beautiful. Black man, unclear on when these changes were made, wrote that these editorial revisions were in place by the 16th century. From a thorough review of many manuscripts and earlier printed editions, I suspect that these changes derive from the 16th century itself. The second edition's table of contents differed from the passage within, the one containing the color changes, the other not. The discrepancy evidences a responsible editorial hand contemporary with the printing. The first 3 editions date from 1514, Constantinople, 1544, Venice, and 1567, Sabianita. This desire of some Jews to clarify their own color had everything to do with their white cultural surroundings. Indeed, the medieval author of the Nisahan Yashan had provided a second retort to the charges of Jewish ugliness and blackness. Let's say that again. Jewish ugliness and blackness, which hinted at the increasing admiration, however begrudging, of European aesthetic norms and values. And one should also answer the Gentiles are fornicators and have sex during the day, and we And we see the faces in beautiful paintings and give birth in their image. As it is written, and the sheep conceived when they came to drink before the rods. Genesis 30, 38-39. Despite external resistance, early modern Sephardian of the upper classes hewed away at the previously emphasized medieval difference between Jews and Christians. As has been often noted, much of the Sephardic self-image was constructed with the same tools and materials as that of Christian Iberians. Scholars have long touted the extraordinary degree of Sephardic assimilation into and affluency with general Iberian cultures from high to low. Already the generations before the expulsions had thoroughly integrated secular and Jewish theological and philosophical speculation. The Messianism of Shlomo, Malho, and other crypto-Jews and former conversos showed immense overlaps with Spanish and Portuguese Christian millenarianism. I can't pronounce that word, guys, and the text is tiny. I can't see it, so I did my best. Yosef Yerushalmi and others have demonstrated the degree to which Sephardic secular literatures have the expulsions reflected contemporary European and especially Iberian literary and aesthetic standards. Calderon, Gongora, Quevedo listed by Bodian as recurrent citations. Some elite Iberian Jews and conversos aspired to and claimed noble lineages. They insisted on their own purity of blood. Bodian wrote of the impulse to continue Iberian socio-intellectual patterns among the Amsterdam Sephardism. Portuguese remained the prominent language among Amsterdam Sephardom until the late 18th century, and among European Jews until the mid-19th century. In the era of the information and solidification of European national identities, the color, authenticity, and social status of Jews caused no small amount of anxiety among Jews. In these centuries, chronicler Elhi Kopsi told readers, people who had never seen a Jew imagined that he lacked the form of a man. Shlomo Ibn Verga assumed that the Christian image is that the Jew is but a human-shaped animal. Wow. Christian images among the Jews is but a Christian-shaped animal. As David C. Katz phrased it regarding England, the Jews were strangers in religion and language, in appearance and in habits. In Northern Europe and its colonial territories, where many of the Sephardian fled, the issue of complexion must have contributed, especially among the elite, to the clarity of cultural difference setting off the Portuguese from their surroundings. In Bodian's fallacious phrasing, remember that Francis Maximilian Mission had in the 1690s rebuked the error that the Jews are all black, for this is only true of the Portuguese. Wow. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there for now, guys. This is not an easy read. It's not, at least not for me. Pronouncing these words, it's just not easy. So I apologize if I couldn't get a lot of the words right, but I believe that the context, you can understand the context and what I was saying and what was being said. There were some bomb drops in there. So overall, it seems as though what happened here in these places in Europe and also in America, everything was Europeanized. Jews were seen as black and ugly. Christians were seen as white and pure. Many Christians were Gentiles, and that was the norm back then. There was no Jews being dark and ugly or black was not something that was that was not true. That was the norm. Black Jews being black in the early world was the norm. So it's funny how now we make these claims, or these claims are being made, and people want to automatically assume that it is a lie, when they refused to do any research and look at these texts and these early books that describe Jews as being ugly, black, and over time, the Jews were Europeanized and then they turned white. One of the phrases, or one of the phrases in this book, was that the Jews were not yet white, right? They were not yet blended into the European way of doing things, the European culture, and not yet were they white, meaning eventually they were going to be pure white, and that was the goal. So that is that. I may continue. I got more pages to the book. If you guys are interested, please let me know in the comment section. Please like, share, and subscribe. YouTube's making it hard on me. They are. They're not making it easy. They're doing their thing. They're keeping me away from the algorithm for now. Hopefully that'll change, but it's all good because you know what? I got my supporters. It's your favorite black gentleman from Nebraska. Please like, share, subscribe. God bless you guys. I hope you have a great day. I'm out. Peace.